Welcome to KMUZ Theater Talk. I'm Ann McBride.
And I'm Ed Shopes.
We're here the first and third Fridays of the month to bring you all the news and interviews about what's happening in the Mid-Willamette Valley theater world.
On today's program, we'll hear from director Jillian Alden from Albany Civic Theater about the psychological ghost story, KARLABOY.
Then, in our second interview segment, Ed and I will talk with director Risa Fleming and Kelsey Wallace and Savannah King from Western Oregon University about their production of the modern comedy, John Proctor is the Villain.
But first, let's get started with our Theater Talk calendar. Ann?
Albany Civic Theater at albanycivic.org, playing May 17th through 25th at ACT is KARLABOY, an absorbing psychological ghost story that explores LGBT issues through the lens of a high-profile 1950s Hollywood marriage of convenience that ended with a starlet's death. It's directed by Jillian Alden. And June 14th through 29th is Bullshot Crummond.
Brush Creek Playhouse is at brushcreekplayhouse.com, and Agatha Christie's classic drawing room mystery, The Mousetrap, is opening June 7th and running through June 23rd. It's directed by Norman Gouveia.
Children's Educational Theater at cetsalem.org. Online registrations are nearly full for CET's 5-week summer theater experience for students from grades 3 through 12. Go to cetsalem.org now, or you may miss out.
The Elsinore Theater is at elsinoretheater.com. A new stage show is premiering at the Elsinore, Metropolis, the musical, written by McMinnville actor-director Tracy Ward. This is a new version that combines onstage action with the original silent film made by Fritz Lang in 1927 as a backdrop, along with music from Giorgio Moroder's 1984 film version. The show runs August 8th through 11th at the historic Elsinore Theater in Salem. And as always, for information about local events and touring shows on stage at the Elsinore, go to their website and Facebook page.
Gallery Theater at gallerytheater.org. On stage through May 19th at the Gallery Theater is Anastasia, the musical. From the twilight of the Russian Empire to 1920s Paris, a brave young woman sets out to discover the mystery of her past with the help of a dashing con man and a lovable ex-aristocrat. And auditions for the musical Grease will be June 2nd through 5th. Go to gallerytheater.org/auditions to sign up.
Kaiser Homegrown Theater is at kaiserhomegrowntheater.org. The Lifespan of a Fact runs June 14th through 30th at KHT. Jim is a fresh out of Harvard fact checker for a sinking New York magazine. John is a talented writer who penned a transcendent essay about the suicide of a teenage boy, an essay that could save the magazine from collapse. But when Jim fact checks John's essay, they come head to head in a comedic yet gripping battle of facts versus truth.
The Majestic Theater is on Facebook and at majestic.org. Monty Python's Spamalot runs through May 19th at the Majestic. It's directed by Ashley Barbeau. And Majestic 8, a festival of 10-minute plays by Oregon and Washington playwrights, runs June 14th and 15th. The festival returns to the Majestic Theater for the first time since 2019, and this year's 8 short plays were chosen from among 40 submissions.
Mid-Valley Musical Theater is at mvmtheater.org and on Facebook at Mid-Valley Musical Theater. Auditions for their summer musical, Mamma Mia, are June 8th. Go to their website for details.
Mid-Valley Theater Network. Director Jeremy Clubb will produce Evil Dead, the musical, October 24th through November 3rd, with a special show on Halloween. The show will benefit the Mid-Valley Theater Network, and there will be some fundraisers coming up this summer. Check out the DoTheNecronomicon.com club is also putting out the call for a stage manager, production manager, and event manager. Send your resume to the Evil Dead MVTN at gmail.com.
Pinnacle Theater at pinnacletheater.org. Auditions for the Farce Meets Murder Mystery Clue on stage happen tomorrow, Saturday, May 18th at Pinnacle Theater. Clue is directed by Brandon Gitchell and runs August 23rd through September 14th. Based on the 1985 movie, which was itself inspired by the classic board game, Clue is a hilarious farce meets murder mystery. For audition info, go to pinnacletheater.org or Pinnacle's Facebook page. The drama Boy Gets Girl by Rebecca Gilman runs June 7th through 29th at Pinnacle Theater. That one's directed by Emily Loberg.
Salem Playhouse offers acting classes to both kids and adults at Kaiser Homegrown Theater and adult classes at Chemeketa Community College. To sign up, go to thesalemplayhouse.com and click on the Classes tab.
Theater 33 at Willamette University is at theater33.org and also on Facebook. Theater 33 has announced the productions for their Summer Festival 2024. Information about the full season of original plays in progress, including staged shows and pop-ups, is on Theater 33's Facebook page and website. You can catch our interview with Executive Director Thomas Nabhan and Artistic Director Susan Coramel wherever you get your podcasts. Opening the season on May 23rd through June 2nd is AP by playwright Dano Madden and directed by Elizabeth Hellman. Grow, Learn, Play by Sarah Jean Acquardi and directed by Melody Erfani runs June 20th through 30th. Gone by Lily Ward and directed by Rod Sabalos runs July 25th through August 4th at the festival. The 2024 New Play Festival pop-ups include Group or Marlene is Dead by Sophia Malimbi, Redline by Barbara Hume, and Wife of Headless Man Investigates Her Own Disappearance by Yusef L.
Chemeketa Community College presents Theater Under the Stars, Oliver. Director Stephen Munshaw and professional members of the Willamette Valley theater community are working together with Chemeketa to present Lionel Bart's classic musical, Oliver, August 6th through 27th at the Jerry Frank Amphitheater in Salem's Riverfront Park. For tickets, go to Eventbrite.
Corbin University at corbin.edu/theater-arts is now taking registrations for its 2024 Summer Theater Camp. Get the details straight from Camp Director Tamara McGinnis on our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast.
Western Oregon University at wou.edu/theater, May 29th through June 1st, John Proctor is the Villain by playwright Kimberly Bellflower is on stage in the Rice Auditorium at Western Oregon University. This bitingly funny comedy is set in a rural high school in Georgia where a group of lively teens are studying Arthur Miller's The Crucible while navigating young love, sex ed, and a few school scandals. It's directed by Risa Fleming, who joins us later in today's program, along with Assistant Director Kelsey Wallace and actor Savannah King.
Willamette University is at wutheater.com, and they've announced their 2024-25 season of plays. They include Urinetown the Musical, a hilarious satire of the legal system, capitalism, social irresponsibility, populism, bureaucracy, corporate mismanagement, municipal bonds, and musical theater. Set in a city that bans private toilets in the midst of a 20-year drought, forcing people to pay to pee at public loos. Urinetown runs November 1st through 17th. February 14th through 23rd, you can see Far Away, an hour-long futuristic nightmare in 3 short scenes that envisions a world where the promise of violence broods and nothing is to be trusted. Closing Willamette University's theater season, April 11th through 26th, is Bloom Bloom Pow the climate doom comedy inspired by 1950s monster movies, as well as the real-life 2014 crisis in Toledo, Ohio, when the tap water became deadly for humans due to toxic algal blooms. Get more information and reserve your seats and tickets at wutheater.com.
Central High School in Independence at chsperformingarts.net. Central High School's spring musical is Legally Blonde, and it runs through tomorrow night, May 18th.
McKay High School is on Facebook at McKay Thespians, and their spring musical, Little Shop of Horrors, also closes tomorrow night, May 18th.
McNary High School on Facebook at Ken Collins Theater. Shakespeare's classic Twelfth Night runs through, you guessed it, Saturday, May 18th at McNary High.
North Salem High School is on Facebook at NSHS Theater. Sense and Sensibility plays at North Salem May 23rd through 25th.
South Salem High School on Facebook at Saxon Drama. 12 Angry Jurors is on stage at the Rose Theater through May 18th, and South Salem Spring Improv Night happens May 23rd.
At Sprague High School, Disney's Frozen Jr. opens tonight and plays through May 22nd at Sprague. Tickets are at the door only, and kids 5 and under can see the show for free.
West Salem High School is at westsalemdrama.com. Radium Girls comes to the West Salem High Stage May 23rd through 25th.
And that wraps up our KMUZ Theater Talk calendar for plays around the Mid-Willamette Valley. Our first guest today is director Jillian Alden from Albany Civic Theater to tell us about KARLABOY, a psychological ghost story told through the lens of high-profile 1950s Hollywood marriage of convenience. We'll be back in a moment with more KMUZ Theater Talk.
We're talking with Jillian Alden, director of KARLABOY at Albany Civic Theater, and it's opening May 17th and continuing till May 25th. Welcome to KMUZ Theater Talk, Jillian.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, Jillian, KARLABOY is a play that is new to me. I don't know too much about the show or Stephen Peros. What attracted you to this show in the first place?
I was going through the Concord Theatrical's website and looking for scripts that sounded interesting. And I read the synopsis and I was like, Ghost, Hollywood glamour, what could that be about? So I bought a copy of it and I read it, and I have been in love with the show ever since.
Can you give us a brief synopsis of the plot?
Essentially, the show follows in the 90s a man named Harold Bachman, who used to be this big Hollywood director in the 50s, in the heyday of Hollywood glamour. And we kind of start the show in Harold's studio living room mansion after he's called this man named Bill over to his house at 1:30 in the morning, because Bill has written a biography about Harold's wife, Carla, who tragically took her own life in 1953. But Harold was visited by Carla's ghost, who said that if the book is published, Harold will die. And so we follow a series of, quote, present day in the 90s of Harold trying to convince Bill that this book can't be published because Carla's ghost is going to show up and kill him, and flashbacks to the 1950s of how Carla and Harold met and what their relationship was like, what their friendship was like, what their marriage was like, all the way up until the night that she died. And he sort of delivers the truth about what that was like at the time, all these years later in the 90s, between the hours of 1:30 and 3:30 in the morning, to this biographer, Bill.
That's interesting. So it's a lot in flashbacks?
Yeah, it's written in such a way that the scenes sort of blend together. For 2 minutes, we'll be talking to Bill and Harold in the 90s, and then Harold will lead us into, well, that's not really happened. It was sort of like this. And Carla and younger Harold appear on the stage and show us something from their life. And then we come back to Bill and Harold in the 90s.
And there's a note that it's LGBT issues.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the things that I really appreciated about this show was that it has that woven in there in the fact that Harold Bachman is a gay man, and he was a gay man in the 50s. So his marriage to Carla is interesting, to say the least. He sort of explains that over the course of the show of how, well, if you really are gay, how did you end up marrying Carla Davin? And he just sort of explains the relationship that they built together and why it made sense for them.
There were many marriages of convenience in Hollywood in the earlier years.
Absolutely. It's not like a core theme of the show necessarily, but the show touches on it and addresses the idea that gay people have been around and they were definitely all over Hollywood at the time, but they weren't allowed to show who they were or be who they really were. And it sort of kind of touches on that topic. Yeah.
And that's a part of the production, but that's not the main focus.
I think it would be a disservice to call it the main focus of the show, but also a disservice to the community and to how important that is to these characters to say that it's not an important part of the show either, if that makes sense.
Right.
The story is also about what is the truth and what is a lie, because the biographer, I guess if you're kind to him, makes up things about Carla with that Harold takes exception to, because he was there. And do we discover anything else about Bill that's important?
You know, we've been really struggling with Bill for the last month or so because there's so much depth and messy complexity, I suppose, to the characters in the show. But Bill kind of just gets dropped in there and doesn't have as much background or story. We see his development as he builds a relationship with Harold, but there's not as much about Bill. Bill's kind of just along for the ride.
So why did Bill choose to write an expose about Carla?
You know, Bill does spend some time in the show describing his relationship or his perceived relationship to Carla. She is described as having been this big, like, bombshell Hollywood star. She only did 3 movies, but there's a lot of storytelling to show how big her impact was on, you know, the Hollywood community and what kind of fans she had carrying out across the decades. And so Bill is sort of a self-identified Carla Davin fan. And you hear him talk about how he's watched her movies over and over and how magical she was on screen. And so he describes this biography that he's written as a labor of love to be able to tell her real story to the world.
But it's not necessarily her real story.
No, it's not.
Well, in every ghost story, at least for me, it always seems like the ghost has some kind of an axe to grind too. Tell us a little bit about Carla's ghost and her role as a pivot for this story. What is Carla's ghost most disturbed by if she tells Harold, you can't have this story published, otherwise I will come and kill you?
You know, I think there's a lot of complexity in the answer to that, because you see all these flashbacks throughout the show of Carla, but they're all told by Harold. So everything that you see has this film over it of how Harold perceived everything that was going on at the time.
Harold's version.
Yeah. And it's kind of left open for the audience to decide if Carla's ghost was ever actually there in the first place. It could be taken that Carla's ghost is the conscience that Harold desperately needs to be able to bring himself to tell the world the truth about her and their relationship.
How does his view of Carla and Bill's view of Carla differ?
Bill writes this tell-all about Carla, where his theory is that Carla was just this wild woman who drove herself to ruin, and she, you know, had several boyfriends in her small hometown, and that behavior continued even after she was married to Harold, and she left him heartbroken and alone because she couldn't handle the consequences of her own behavior. But Harold's take on Karla is that she's the most loyal, like compassionate, pure ladylike woman that he had ever known.
Wow.
Well, how would you describe your overall vision and concept for KARLABOY? What is important that you want to bring to the stage?
In my day life, I am a student mental health therapist. And I think that lens is part of what made me fall in love with this show, and is part of what I'm trying to bring, is to show that being a person and having relationships is more complicated than having these black and white situations, than having a happy or a failing marriage. It's more complicated than, I was the good guy in the story or I was the bad guy in the story. There's always the gray area in there. And my hope with this show is to, engage that emotional like aspect for people and think about what our relationships are like with each other. Is there more than one way to be in love with a person? Is there more than one way to accept myself for who I am and still strive for change?
What kinds of directorial choices, stumbling blocks, innovations have you had to face while directing the show and telling the story the way you want it to be presented?
The obvious one is there's not any like clear scene changes in the like historical theater sense. We don't pull the curtain, we don't move a ton of furniture on and off. We sort of had to figure out a way to shift almost seamlessly from 40 years in the future to back to the 1950s, using lighting cues and vibes, I guess.
It sounds kind of like a movie.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair to say. And I think I did my best to follow some of the guidelines that Stephen had written along with the script, because I think it's supposed to feel a little like a movie. It's supposed to follow that 1950s, romantic drama.
Yeah. What do you think the audience will take away from this production? When they describe it to someone who hasn't seen it, what will they say?
I have been reading this script over and over for almost 2 years now. So I definitely have a different perspective than somebody with fresh eyes would have. But I think, the show leaves you on a really heavy, kind of somber note. And I think that we often walk away from things with the last emotion we felt.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing people will say was like, wow, that show was a lot. But I think it's going to be one of those processing a little while after as well. Like, oh, it was so beautiful capturing the Hollywood essence. I mean, and I hope that there's more than that too. There's so much depth to the characters in this show that there's a lot of different threads to follow if you're talking about people and relationships. And I wonder why he said this thing, or why would she choose to do this if he was like that?
Now, I just want to know, how big is the cast? You're talking about 4 people? A young Harold and an old Harold and Bill and Karla?
There's 11 total in the cast, but the main 4 are those Harold, a young Harold, Bill, and Karla. And then we have, somebody who plays the studio boss of the 50s, somebody who plays, a fair love interest, and then an ensemble who make up all of the characters in Harold's memories.
Now, the author of the play was a Dramalogue Critics Award winner, or the play won a Dramalogue Critics Award. Have you any contact with him?
Yes, I, on a whim, emailed him, Stephen Peros, and was like, hey, do you want to come to our production? And he answered me and he said, that sounds really cool. So we're having a whole opening weekend, several events in the weekend to include Stephen. We partnered with Downtown Albany Business Wine Crush, and they're hosting an opening night after party where the cast, myself, my production team, and Stephen, our playwright, are all going to be at. to, answer questions about the show after you've seen it on opening night and talk about it and, schmooze a little.
Well, it sounds really great to have the author there and his insights into his labor of love, really. Any director and actor uses the words of the playwright as a jumping off point for their performance as well. So it's going to be interesting to Stephen Peros to see the interpretation that you're going to bring to this show.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And he seems really excited that somebody's picked up, his first script, his first baby, and wants to do something with it. And he's also going to join us Saturday the 18th at Albany Civic Theater to talk about his career a little bit in writing, because he's not only written plays, he's also written for film and television. He's got a couple of graphic novels. He's done a lot.
KARLABOY is a great little ghost story. It's all about Hollywood. It's all about truth and lies. It's by Stephen Peros and directed by Jillian Alden at Albany Civic Theater. The performances are May 17th through 25th. And there's a couple of little specials in this run at Albany Civic. May 17th is a VIP opening night after party with playwright Stephen Peros and the director, and you'll get a chance to hear from Stephen directly. And then May 18th is a conversation with Stephen Peros, because this was his first play, but he's done so much more with his career since. We'll be able to get a chance to hear that as well. Well, we want to thank Jillian Alden from Albany Civic Theater, the director of the show, for stopping by here at KMUZ Theater Talk today. Thanks, Jillian.
Thanks, Jillian. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up next, Ann and I talk with director Risa Fleming from Western Oregon University Theater about John Proctor is the Villain. She's joined by assistant director Kelsey Wallace and actor Hannah King. Stay with us. More KMUZ Theater Talk is coming your way.
We're talking with Risa Fleming, director, and Savannah King and Kelsey Wallace, who are doing John Proctor is the Villain at Western Oregon University. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
Hey, Risa, we all pretty much know The Crucible. We all studied it in high school. We've probably seen a production or two of it.
Yes.
But this is a kind of a different take on the Crucible story. Tell us a little bit about the plot line of the play and what brought you to want to do this show.
Ed, I've been wanting to do this show for about 3 years. It was being done off Broadway. John Proctor is the Villain basically turns Arthur Miller's Crucible on its head, because John Proctor has always been considered one of the great heroes of theater. And this show questions that. A young group of students in a young feminist club start really looking into the character of John Proctor. And Kimberly Bellflower wrote this play during, the height of the Me Too movement and how women were treated. And so it's really interesting going back into the history of the Salem witch trials, looking back at the history behind Arthur Miller's play of The Crucible and what kind of rights those women had in early American history. So it's been really fascinating. I am loving the show. It's set in 2019 in northeastern Georgia, and wonderful characters, which I have the blessing of having just this amazing cast from Western Oregon University working their heart and souls out on stage.
Well, I'm going to tell a little truth here. I love Arthur Miller. I love his work. I have never, ever liked The Crucible because mainly of what you're talking about, how the women are treated, the disadvantage they're put behind, how fear of women can drive conflict in the community, and why men are always so threatened by strong women. That play just drives me nuts every time I see it. It's like, oh, you have to come and see The Crucible. Okay, it's going to be different. Oh, yeah. No, it's not. So I'm really looking forward to this show.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Ed, because I also love Arthur Miller. I've done several of his plays, but I also have always had trouble with John Proctor in particular, the way the women are treated in The Crucible. And I know that a lot of it was an allegory for McCarthyism, but it still doesn't treat women very well.
Certain
So
things were just accepted then.
Yeah, yes,
And then
exactly.
we don't accept them now.
No.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. And in a small town in Georgia, it can be pretty conservative. So it's really interesting what the characters are dealing with.
I'm trying to remember how pissed off I was at the treatment of women during The Crucible. You get so thrown by the plot line and the imbalances in justice at the Salem witch trials and in McCarthyism. You forget about how they're treating women, but they're pretty bad.
I so agree with you, Anne. It's and they are struggling with it, and a teacher who believes that John Proctor is definitely a hero. So I'm really anxious for you to see the show, everyone to see this show, because it really opens your eyes.
Well, Kelsey Wallace, you are the assistant director of this show, and I'm sure you and Risa talked a lot about it beforehand. This play is set in a rural high school where teenage actors are navigating through the plot of The Crucible. Tell us a little bit about that trope in the story and what you hope to bring to the audience's attention.
So in the show, a lot of things that happen in The Crucible are kind of reflected in the lives of the students and what they're living through. And it's interesting, we talked on one of the first rehearsals about the comparison between the characters in The Crucible and the characters in John Proctor. And a lot of them have almost one-for-one matches up with characters in The Crucible and characters in this show. And so it's been fun to find those moments in the show where you go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what happens in The Crucible. And now it's just happening through this more modern lens. So that's been something that has been really fun to explore.
What is it you'd like the audience to learn from this play?
I think this is a very timely show. And I would like audiences to go in and realize that happen in this show do happen in real life as well.
Savannah, you're an actor in this play. Can you tell me how your part kind of changes or does it? Tell me about your part.
Yes, of course. So my character is Shelby, and my character sort of reflects the character Abigail from The Crucible a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
She's very fond of Abigail and is very much on Abigail's side throughout the whole show. And so Shelby, at the beginning of the show, has been gone for a couple of months, and nobody really knows why. She kind of left on bad terms. And so her return is kind of shocking. And so when she comes back, there's a lot of talk and speculations and rumors. And then slowly throughout the scenes, Shelby reveals herself to you, and it is kind of kooky. It's a little crazy, but it's so much fun. She is such a fun character to get to learn and just explore and play with. I've truly had some of the best time in this character work, because I myself was in high school in 2019. And so this is just my cup of tea, right? I know everything going on, and I listen to the lines in the show, and I'm just yep, I've had this exact conversation, or yep, I've seen this exact thing happen. And so getting to approach it in that way, where it's in Shakespeare, we're kind of I have to create it in my head, whereas I've lived this world. And so, this character is just so fun, so kooky, but you really do get to understand her by the end of the show, and I think that her storyline is very beautiful.
How will audiences react to your character and to what the play
Ooh.
is saying?
I think at first people could be a little unsure of her, but I do really hope that by the end their eyes are opened and they can understand like the severity of like, people struggling not only just in life, but like mental health and like struggling and like in things that you don't know about. And then when they reveal those things to you, like how you react to them is really important, and like how you support people who, come forth with things. It is just like the impact of that is so great. And I hope that audiences really just get to see that, if anything, just listen to the people who are talking, listen to what they're saying. Don't be so quick to brush it off, because there are some outside circumstances that, make you question the truth.
Wow. That will be interesting to see how they react.
Kelsey, I have a question for you. This play is a comedy. People have called it bitingly funny. How does comedy drive the plot ahead, and what is the role of comedy that hurts in this play?
This is also something that we have talked a lot about during rehearsal, because the show is dealing with a lot of serious topics, but they do try to do it in a more lighthearted way. And so something that we have worked on a lot is finding, even in the serious moments, ways to make it light and make it funny. And of course, there are also just a lot of funny lines in the show. It's one of the reasons that the audience wants to keep watching, because they're going, wow, this is so serious. And like 2 minutes later, they're cracking up laughing at a joke. And so it really helps move it along, and it helps the pace not get too slow and boring and like dragging. It helps to have those moments of comedy that really keep people wanting to see more.
And it's really good because the Crucible is not known for laughing.
Right.
It's not a laugh riot.
Although I have laughed at some performances, but that's another story. We've been talking about John Proctor is the Villain, the Spring Theater production at Western Oregon University. Runs May 29th through June 1st at the Rice Auditorium in Monmouth. And there is a ASL signed performance on May 31st, if you're interested in that. Tickets are available at Western Oregon University Theater's website. Search online for that. Thank you so much, Risa Fleming, the director of the show, Assistant Director Kelsey Wallace, and Savannah King, who plays Shelby, for joining us here on KMUZ Theater Talk to give us the lowdown on John Proctor is the Villain at WOU Theater.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne, and I appreciate you both, Ed, so much.
This was so fun. Thank you for having us.
It's time to wind up today's KMUZ Theater Talk program. Thank you for joining us. Next Friday at 9 a.m., tune in to KMUZ at 100.7 FM to hear Talking About Art with Joel Zack. KMUZ Theater Talk is a proud member of the Mid-Valley Theater Network.
KMUZ Theater Talk comes your way at 9 a.m. the first and third Friday of the month on your radio or smart speaker at 100.7 and 88.5 FM, on your favorite radio app, or streaming live at kmuz.org. You can also listen to KMUZ Theater Talk anytime, wherever you get your podcasts.
Ed and I will return June 7th with a brand new KMUZ Theater Talk program. Meanwhile, check out our KMUZ Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley.
If you haven't yet joined in to support Theater Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs, go to kmuz.org right now, click on the Pledge to Your Favorite Show box, and choose KMUZ Theater Talk. And thanks. Until next time,
We'll see you in the front row.